All right, welcome back to math class. This is Mrs. Witt. We're in week 5. This is the first lesson of the week, so lesson 5.1, and we're going to talk about absolute value as a distance between numbers. So to recap our goals for this first unit, we are at week 5. We want to be able to say that I can model the distance between two rational numbers using absolute value. Just a reminder that next week we're going to apply all the skills together, and we will review and test. So take a minute to do the warm-up. If you're doing this on Edpuzzle, it'll pop up on the right. Otherwise, we will do these together in class. Okay, so we talked about this a lot over the last few weeks, but absolute value of 6 and negative 6 is both 6, and 2 and negative 2 is both 2. Well, if we put those together and used them as grouping symbols, 6 minus 2 would equal 4. And here, this turns into a 6 minus 2 as well. So do we see kind of a pattern here where they're all ending up that way? They're all ending up positive. Or the absolute values end up positive. So our key terms for this week, I want to make sure that we're all talking about distance in the same way. And for the sake of this lesson, distance is a numerical measurement of how far apart objects are or points are. So if we looked at it, let's say on a number line where I've got negative 1, 0, and 1. If I said I wanted to know what the distance was from this point to this point, well, I'd be able just to count those 1, 2. The distance is the numerical measurement, so it's that measurement of 2 spaces, 2 units apart. The other thing we've talked about quite a lot, but I wanted to make sure we mentioned it again this week, the absolute value is the distance from 0 on a number line. So if we had that same number line where we had negative 1 and 0 and 1, and we wanted to know, well, what is the absolute value of negative 1? What is the absolute value of 1? We'd start at 0 and we would travel to negative 1. Well, that's 1 unit. If we did it the other way, that's also 1 unit. So there we can kind of see visually why it's always positive, because it's a distance. So let's explore some things on a number line. So if we look at this and we ask ourselves, what's the distance on this number line from A to B? So let's see, just from A to B, let's count 1, 2, 3. Well, that's 3 spaces. And what if we wanted to go from B to A? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Well, that's also 3 spaces. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, let's just subtract them. Just subtract things. Well, okay, well, let's see what that looks like. If we take A minus B, so negative 1 minus 2, well, we've been practicing rewriting that as addition. So negative 1, I'm going to change that operator and take the inverse of 2, which is negative 2. Same signs, add and keep. They're both negative, so I'm going to add them and keep them. Well, if I just subtract those 2 numbers, I get a negative 3. Okay, well, let's see if we go from B to A. Well, so that's 2 minus negative 1. And we know how to rewrite that. We can do 2. We're going to change the operator and take the inverse, and that gives us 3. So what do we notice? Well, when we count the spaces, they're both positive. But when we just subtract the numbers, one of them is negative and one of them is positive, right? So let's look at that again. If we did from B to A, this is just a recap of the slide. From B to A, let's see, we could rewrite that as 2 plus the inverse. That's the one that gave us 3. And this one had negative 1 plus a negative 2. That's the other one we did. And that one's where we got a negative 3. Well, they gave us different numbers when we were just adding, but what we know about distance is that it's always positive, right? So how would we make that always positive? Well, we could look at using absolute value. So if we put that in absolute value, so the absolute value of b minus a, okay, well, this is just a grouping symbol. We know how to do that. So let's do 2, let's change our operator and take the inverse. So the absolute value of 2 minus a negative 1 is the same thing as saying the absolute value of 2 plus 1, which is just the absolute value of 3, which is 3, okay? And let's do the next one from a minus b. Well, absolute value is a grouping symbol, negative 1. Let's change that operator and take the inverse. Same signs, add and keep. They're both negative. So I'm going to add them together and keep the sign. Well, what is the absolute value of negative 3? It's also 3. So when we think about it being, like even over here, when we just looked at them as just numbers, we got a negative 3. But what's the game changer here is that we know that distance is always going to be positive. So what we want to do is we want to view this through using the absolute value. So we noticed when we compared the value of this one, what do we know? Look at it. Let's look and see. What is the value of this one compared to the value of this one? So whether I go from here to here or from here to here, we discovered that it gives us the same value, right? So what we can think about is we can use the absolute value to find a distance between numbers. And when we do, we're going to subtract the two numbers. We're going to subtract the two numbers from each other in either order. So the order it's okay, it doesn't matter, because we are going to use the absolute value of them. But just, I do want to point out, be careful with the signs, because sometimes we'll be subtracting a negative. So we can subtract the two numbers from each other in any order we want inside there, but we have to do that inside the absolute value bars because it's measuring a distance. So let's try an example. Let's find the distance between 8 and 2 using the number line and then using absolute value. Okay, so there's 8 and there's 2, and if I use the number line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can say that the distance between 8 and 2, is 6, or 6 units, 6 spaces, using the number line. Well, what if I did the absolute value? Well, I could take, I think that most of us are most comfortable subtracting the little number from the big one. So let's try 8 minus 2. The absolute value of that is the absolute value of 6, which is just 6. So far, so good, those match. So now let's try it the other way. What if we decided to subtract them in the other direction? And we did 2 minus 8 inside the absolute value. Well, 2 minus 8, we could rewrite that as addition if we wanted to. So 2 plus the inverse of 8 is negative 8. Same signs, add and keep. Different signs, subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. Well, they're different signs, so I can subtract them. 8 minus 2 is 6. I'm going to keep the sign of the larger number, which is the negative. Well, the absolute value of negative 6 is also 6. So there we validated what we were just thinking, that you can do 8 minus 2 or 2 minus 8 as long as we're using those absolute value. And we can use that absolute value because we're talking about a distance. So now you try this example on your own. Find the distance between 1 and 9 using the number line and then using absolute value. Okay, so you should have discovered that the distance, when you count it up on the number line, is 8 units. And then we can verify that by subtracting the numbers in either order and the absolute value of that gives us 8. So it checks out. All three are the same. So let's practice that. So find the distance using the absolute value. So I'll set one up here with you. So let's do the first one together. We're going to have, let's try 17, the absolute value of 17 minus 12. Well, what is the difference between 17 and 12? We know that that is 5. The absolute value of 5 is just 5. So our answer here is 5. Now you do the rest of them on your own. If you're in Edpuzzle, there'll be a pop-up for you to answer. Otherwise, we will do this class together. All right, hopefully you had a minute to work on those. If you were in Edpuzzle, you hopefully got the right answers. If not, you might want to go back and rewind it a little bit, look at this again, investigate it further, or get with me and ask some questions and see if we can't help you understand a little bit more. Moving on, we're going to look ahead at the rest of this week. So if you're watching this on Monday, Tuesday, you can continue to the choice board, correct any missing choice board activities from prior weeks, and begin choice board 5. Just to remind you, choice boards cover the entire week. They're due on Friday at the end of school, which is 3 o'clock. So that just means that I'm going to do my grading at the end of school at 3 o'clock. I will accept late submissions, but it will be graded later. It could be graded all the way up until the end of next week, okay? Also, I wanted to say that you're expected to get 20 points every week, but from now on out, I will allow you to get, let's make that where you can see it. That doesn't, so you're required to get 20 points on every choice board, but from now on out, I'm going to allow you to get up to 5 extra credit points, so you could get as many as 25 points a week. You can do as many things as you like, but I'm going to max that extra credit out at 5 points a week. So you must get 20 points, but you can do a little extra work and get up to 5 points extra credit. Okay, let's see. On Wednesday, you'll watch a video and then complete the unit review. I'm going to give you a review on Wednesday. That's for you to study. It does not need to be submitted. Reminder, the test is next week. So it'll be important for you guys to actually do that review on your own. Now, my A block students, you will take the test in class on Monday or Tuesday. And then there'll be an activity, there'll be a task online for Thursday, Friday. And then my B block students and my remote students, you're gonna take the test on Thursday, Friday. So if you are B block, you'll take it here in class on Thursday, Friday. If you're remote, you'll take it online Thursday or Friday. And then Thursday and Friday, if you need to, you'll complete any tasks that you haven't done yet and finish working on choice board 5. That will be the latest date that I'm taking. I'm sorry, the next week will be the week 6 is when our week 6 is when our test is. So this is looking at next week. All of this is next week, okay? So great job. Keep working hard. You're doing awesome. And let me know if you have questions.